What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego back with some more boxing. As you guys know, it's Thursday, which means Throwback Thursday, so I decided to take it back to the heavyweight division circa 2003. That year, you've seen a tremendous fight with two gargantuans, and that was Lennox Lewis versus Vitali Klitschko. To me, this is when the heavyweight division died after this fight. As far as the build-up, there was a tremendous build-up. Klitschko was climbing through the ranks. He was disposing of people. He had the size to match Lennox Lewis, who was 6'5". And we had already seen at this point Lennox Lewis versus Mike Tyson. And it appeared Mike Tyson was kind of a shell of his former self. They were entertaining the idea of a Lennox Lewis versus Mike Tyson fight. But I don't think Mike showed enough. He did some things in spots with Tyson Lewis, but nowhere near the buildup of what the fight was in its prime. Kind of like a Manny Pacquiao Mayweather. When Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson was first talked about, I think if it had immediately happened, that would have been a better fight. But Mike Tyson started doing all kinds of stuff. He was doing drugs, and this is post-prison Mike. So I don't know if it was the same Tyson. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just being honest. So that chapter was closed. Tyson didn't really want the rematch. There was no real reason for the rematch. He was stopped. And I don't know if he did enough to warrant a rematch. Then you have this guy from overseas, Vitali Klitschko. Him and his brother are giants, and they're just making a lot of noise. And that's the best way to get the public's attention. Just make so much noise. Keep banging on the front door till they can't deny you. And then someone has to come answer. You're not going to just let somebody bang on your front door and go unanswered for hours, you know what I mean? So that's what Klitschko was doing. He was climbing the ladder, put himself in a mandatory position, which is something where boxing, since it's become a business, has been kind of per the fighter. Like, oh, I want to fight my mandatory, or I want to take a big money fight. If you watch Paulie Malignaggi versus Adrian Broner, that fight happened, and Paulie Malignaggi's mandatory challenger at the time was Diego Chavez, who later went on to face Keith Thurman and lose. But Paulie opted to go the Broner route, the bigger fight, the money fight. The networks probably would rather that because Diego Chavez, although he's skilled, he's tough, he's more or less a foreign fighter without a big fan base in the States. So that's one of the things I notice about boxing is the mandatory doesn't always get their fair shot. They work, and work themselves into position, but then they don't always get it. Back to Klitschko Lewis, the buildup was being talked about. Again, you see a guy from Ukraine with the size to match, and it looks like the knockout power and the skill, the jab, to compete with Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis wasn't really favorable, from what I heard, of Klitschko's. He wasn't too impressed, so to speak, with him as a heavyweight, and Klitschko worked his way up into that position. They fought, and it turned out to be a much, much tougher fight than I'm sure Lennox Lewis was anticipating or preparing for. A lot of times you have these guys from overseas, and other fighters from Mexico or America might take them lightly, like, oh, who is this dude? But you can't think like that because you never know how bad someone wants it and how hard they're training and what skills. So it doesn't really matter necessarily your national origin. I mean, you could say that everything is stereotypes, basically. Anyway, the fight happened, and it was a tremendous fight. Klitschko started off strong. He came out hungry and aggressive. Like, he didn't really show fear, which was good. So the first two rounds, he had Lennox Lewis kind of staggered and wobbled. The third round, Lennox Lewis, I think he came to the realization that I'm in a real fight. This is not just going to be a walk in the park for me. This is a real deal opponent. And Lennox Lewis was dominant for so long where he may have been complacent. Because if you look at his body type in this fight, he looked kind of soft to me from what I've seen him in. He also underestimated Hasim Rahman when they fought the first time, and he got knocked out for it. I heard he was not really taking it serious in training camp, came to Africa late, like a week or two out before the fight, and he was filming Ocean's 11 and stuff like that. Boxing is not the business you should be in if you are not taking it seriously. It's like a cop. If you're a cop you can't afford to not be on your job, be observant, be on your P's and Q's, and you know what I mean, slack off, I guess you could say, because that could be your life on the line. Same thing with boxing. Boxing requires your undivided attention. So I think there was a bit of underestimation on Lennox Lewis's part. Turned out to be a hell of a fight, real back and forth, and they dubbed it Battle of the Titans, which was a great name for it because that's exactly what it was. They were both coming, landed some bombs. Lennox Lewis did some good things in there. He opened up a cut on Vitali Klitschko's face, and then a second cut, and he just kept targeting that cut, which is rightfully so. If you're boxing and you see maybe you're down on the scorecards or he's stealing some rounds, and then you see that vulnerability, that's exactly what you got to do. Look at more recently Peter Quillen versus Gabe Rosado. Gabe Rosado seemed like he was coming on strong, getting his second win, and Peter Quillen looked like he was actually declining, where Gabe Rosado was ascending and coming on strong. And then that cut unfortunately opened up on Gabe Rosado's eye. Peter Quillen did what a fighter is supposed to do and just keep punishing that eye, keep targeting that eye to the point where if it gets you a stoppage or, you know what I mean, you make it so bad, that's your scapegoat out of the fight. And I think that's what Lennox Lewis did here. He was down on the scorecards. He did win some rounds, but I think the ebb and flow was kind of favoring Klitschko, and he found that right in some people get like wrapped up in controversy in boxing and stuff. If a punch opened up a cut, then there is no controversy. If it's a headbutt or something other, and then the fight is stopped for that, I feel it. And if a punch opens up a cut, then it's fair and square. That's fair game. There's no controversy. It's unfortunate, especially if the fighter was winning, the opponent was winning, the opponent who received the cut or whatnot was winning the fight. It's unfortunate, but there's no controversy. So if it's not a headbutt or nothing, it's not a controversy. A punch opens up a cut, and then someone exploits it. The fight will be stopped, and fighters know this going in. So as much of a fight as Klitschko put up, and as good of a fight as it was, Lennox Lewis did the right thing. He did what champions do, and you exploit a weakness and you take and seize that moment and that opportunity. That cut was disgusting. That was a nasty cut on Klitschko. I don't even think I've seen Klitschko since then cut like that. So obviously there's some force behind Lennox Lewis's punches. Plus he was a veteran. He's seasoned. It didn't look like it was getting any better with that cut for Klitschko. Now, we live sometimes in a fantasy world. A lot of fans live in a fantasy world where they want to see the underdog win, or they want this triumphant Rocky experience. But you have to take into consideration Klitschko was younger at the time, and this is his career. This is his life and his livelihood at stake. To make the wrong call, to have a blown call in basketball versus boxing or any other sport other than boxing, it really could be like game changing. You know what I mean? Like, you make a blown call in basketball, everyone pretty much lives to see another day. Like, oh, I didn't get the foul I wanted. In boxing, that could be your career. Look at Antonio Margarito. His corner didn't stop it. Garcia didn't stop it when Pacquiao was bludgeoning his eye. Now he had one fight afterwards. Cotto further cemented his eye damage, and now he's retired. It happens like this all the time in boxing. Boxing is a brutal combat sport, so I do feel the right decision was made. As much as I was enjoying the fight, even watching it again, it's still a great fight. You got to save your fighter. You got to do what's right. You're going to let a man who's 6'5", 250, 265, or whatever Lennox Lewis was weighing at the time, who's seasoned, who's been to that championship level for so long, continue targeting that eye and punishing your fighter. That could be irreversible damage. But altogether, a great fight. A lot of people say after that Lennox Lewis didn't treat it like a true champion. Even after the fight, Lennox Lewis, you could tell he was getting pissed. He was talking with Larry Merchant, and Merchant was being a prick. I will say that. He was just like, oh, da-da. He was just giving him a super hard time, especially for an interviewer. And Lennox Lewis was grabbing the mic, and he's like, look at the state of his face. It was deteriorating. I was coming on. I don't know what you're talking about. He was getting hella mad. But he was getting booed. Lennox Lewis got booed. They proposed a rematch. They talked about it. Lennox Lewis, from what I heard, pulled out or said he didn't want to, and then he shortly retired like the next year in 2004. So it's unfortunate. I would have loved to see a rematch. Klitschko was like I said, he was younger. I want to see what he was able to do in a rematch, what he learned from the first fight, and I think it'd have been a hell of a rematch. Some people take that as, oh, Lennox Lewis was ducking, but Lennox Lewis had a long reign, so it's up to him to decide if he wants to continue fighting. There's other reasons other than a fucking Klitschko why he would retire. And I'm not saying he did or didn't duck. I don't really care because, I mean, that's years ago and there's nothing I could do about it now. Let me know what you guys think of Lennox Lewis versus Klitschko. Again, a great fight. To me, that's really when the heavyweight division died. Recently, we've seen some heavyweights emerge, the Deontay Wilders, the Tyson Furies, you got a Brian Jennings, and a couple Perez. You got a couple other guys, Chris Arreola, Bermain Stavern, some other guys who are making some noise out here in the heavyweight division. But to me, it's been dormant for so long. The Klitschkos, after Lennox Lewis retired, just really took the torch and they've held it and they've been very dominant at it. So hopefully we get some new blood. We get to see Vitali's going on to the politics, and we get to see an exciting heavyweight division, because when I was growing up, that's what it was. The heavyweight division, you had your Tommy Morrisons, your Ray Mercers, Larry Holmes was in there, George Foreman, Mike Tyson's, tons of terrific heavyweight fighters, your Michael Moores, and I think we should get it back to that. And I would love to see the heavyweight division emerge and get exciting again. So that's my Throwback Thursday. Let me know what you guys think of this video. Let me know what you guys think of Lennox Lewis versus Klitschko Part 1. There should have been a sequel, but there wasn't. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video's Ego signing off.